Hey YouTube, it's Cliff. Today I want to talk about the IMF making comments about the nation of El Salvador shifting their money from US bonds to Bitcoin. So typically what you would see is El Salvador, their reserve currency was mostly in the US dollar. And a lot of that was a relationship between the IMF and them to buy US bonds. Now, recently they have started to shift to purchasing Bitcoin, and the IMF has issued statements saying as that is a risky strategy. So El Salvador's USD denominated bonds fell to 64.4 cents to the US dollar on Monday, making the Central American country one of the worst performers on the foreign debt market. Investors are reportedly concerned that President Nayib Bukele's latest Bitcoin City initiative effectively pulls a plug on the IMF's long-time efforts to establish a relationship with the country. A USD denominated bond is a bond issued outside of the US by a foreign company or government that is denominated in the US dollar rather than a local currency, because El Salvador doesn't really have a local currency. They pretty much at this point are using Bitcoin or the US dollar. El Salvador's dollar bonds due in 2050 peaked at 110 in April 2021, however, have been in free fall ever since. So even at their peak in April 2021, they were only making a 10% return. Now, the issue that we're seeing is inflation for the US dollar has been around 6%, let's say. Some people would even say more, but the typical standard is around 5.5 to 6%. So they're only making 4% return on these bonds. And so what they're thinking is if they could shift to Bitcoin, they're going to make a greater return, which will allow them to build the Bitcoin city, help the Bitcoin beach. There's a lot of like schools that the president is wanting to build using Bitcoin. Now, the IMF considers this risky because the Federal Reserve has been quoted to say that inflation is just transitory. So typically, what happens as inflation rises, the central bank will also raise the interest levels. And they hope to do this because it'll bring inflation down. And somewhere along the point, it'll kind of even out. And what they believe is as the economy kind of recovers, people will take their money out of Bitcoin, and at that point, well, people typically invest in Bitcoin because they believe it's a hedge against inflation. And as money flows out of Bitcoin, the price is going to tank. And at that point, they believe that El Salvador's economy will also get wrecked. So that is what they're warning against at this point. Now, obviously, they have motivation to suggest that they should keep their money in the US dollar. So, how is that going to play out? I don't know. It's incredibly interesting, especially when you consider that we're probably somewhere near the end of the bull cycle, and to see what's going to happen to El Salvador's economy as we enter the bear market. What is going to happen to their population when the price of Bitcoin starts to fall? How are they going to handle that? There's already protests going on now. People believe that they shouldn't be investing all of this money in Bitcoin. Now, there are other sides of the population, like Maria Lopez, who's a 34-year-old mother of two. What she does is she sells beer at Bitcoin Beach, and so far, the gains alone that she's made is around 7K. So, but like I said, right now we're in a bear market or in a bull market. So I don't know how this is going to play out. I'm just incredibly interested in to see what's going to happen. So specifically, according to the IMF, El Salvador's public debt could escalate beyond 95% of its GDP by 2026 if the country does not implement strong policy measures, which to me that just means they need to be using our money, not Bitcoin. So They're hoping if they were to correct their policies, they could correct the fiscal imbalance and ease constraints on the growth of that debt. The debt figure did not include Bitcoin bonds, which was recently announced when the El Presidente came out on stage and was talking about the new Bitcoin city. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen. I'm just incredibly interested in where this is going to go. So let me know what you think. Do you think El Salvador is going to get wrecked when the price of Bitcoin drops? Or are they going to end up looking like geniuses when the price of Bitcoin hits 100K or more, and then they can completely revamp their cities? I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts.